Manitowish Waters Historical Society presents A Chat with Ken Smith, August 10th, 1999. In 2021, Manitowish Waters Historical Society benefactors have generously funded interns who will record about 24 historic videos from Kohler Library. Community members like Jim Robinson created these early videos that are available on our YouTube channel. Please take time and explore each of these timeless gems. We hope you enjoy the video.
August 10th, 1999, and we're talking with Ken Smith at his home in Manitowish Waters on Manitowish Lake. And Ken, let's start off by talking about the land that's been in your family and how long it's been in the family.
Well, I have the records here that we've kind of compiled recently. And in 1916, my family was at Voss's for the summer, which was a little, what we call American plant today, but it was like a camp, and they served meals and everything. Had nice cottages. I wasn't born yet, as I said, but they bought the land in 1916, and they built, my father, Charles S. Smith, better known as Cap Smith, purchased 100 acres of land here on a peninsula that included a part of it on Manitowish Lake and a part of it on Star Lake, Little Star Lake as I think they call it sometimes, and it had 7,500 feet of frontage. I don't know if I should tell you the price or not, it's ridiculous. But he built, in 1916, he built an ice house. I don't know why he built an ice house first. And then he added 2 bedrooms to it, and that became a little place to live. And then they built a large home on the property in 1970. And that became the center of our family life, because I was born in 1918, and so I have been coming here every summer ever since. And all of us and the children, at some time or other, went to the little school over here. My 2 brothers and sister, they attended the old school, which was one-room schoolhouse, which was back of Deer Park Lodge in the woods. I don't know what years that was. It was well before my time of going to school. And then I attended the school on Highway 51 when it was just a one-room school, had just been completed in 1931. Fall of 1931. And I was in school with me at that time was Sally Lovelace, now Dolly Turpin, Lillian Nisela, now Lillian Rayala. Abel Winnetka Jr. was in the 1st grade. Cal Laporte was in the 1st grade. The Kerner boys were in there, Alvin Kerner's 2 sons. Uh, Art Otto, who owned Twin Pines Resort, and he had two girls in there. And there were a number of other people, I can't remember them all, but it goes back to that. And so this was the center of the Smith summer until World War II. And then, of course, we all had to go our ways with World War II. And I think I was the first one back here after World War II. I was back here the summer of 1946. Our big home had burned down in 1937 that we had built in 1917. So my father was also participated in the war activities. And he came back in about 1948. He had other things to do. And then he built a new home here. In the meantime, back in the 20s, my father had built several cottages here, primarily for guests and for, he didn't run it as a resort, he ran it, he had a lumber business in Chicago, and it was for clients to come up, you know, invite them up for a weekend or a week or whatever, and then eventually it filled up with relatives. So it just became a family compound, that was it. Since then, my father passed on, my mother passed on in 1962, 61 or 62. My father passed on in 1972. There were the four of us, my two brothers, my sister and I, who continued to maintain the place up to now. And we succeeded, but in the past couple of years, well, since 1995, my two brothers, one brother had been gone for several years, my other brother, Bud, passed on, and my brother's wife, who had been participating in it, passed on, left me and my sister and third generation owners.
What were your brothers' names and your sisters?
My oldest brother was Gordon, my sister is Jeanette, and my other brother, he was next to me in age, he was 8 years older than I was Charles S. Jr., commonly known as Bud Smith. And with their passing, we have run into the old thing that the third generation really isn't too much interested in the place anymore. So we're kind of losing it, and we're not losing it, but the interest is gone, except with me and my sister. So we're maintaining our part of it now. And I don't think I could add much else to it, except that I have a lot of things here. My father was quite active up here. He was active early in his time up here, back in the before 1938, before World War II started in 1939. And then afterwards, he was quite active also. He served as the Justice of the Peace, and he's served in other capacities and been quite active around the areas. And some people liked him, some people didn't like him, but I'll tell you one thing, he was really interested in promoting this place and keeping it a wildlife too. And that really is our history. We're up to today, and I think we can go into some interesting past. For example, I notice I have on the wall in here my brother Gordon, who passed on incidentally the same year as my father did in 1972. He's a charter member of the Manitowish Lions Club. And I don't think people know that. It's Gordon Smith. And my brother Bud, the other thing he did up here, he was never active in politics, but my father put out a map of the area for advertising purposes and to give out to tourists. And it's a very good map. I noticed here's in 1982, it had a price on it of $1, but I think it was given away. My dad started putting that out. I don't know when. It's the oldest one I have is in 1962. This is in 1982. Then my brother Bud, when my father passed on, my brother Bud ran this. Now his daughters have turned it to somebody else who are now running it. They put it out this year. You still see it around the different establishments here. I don't know what else I could
Well,
say.
back in the original cabin, when they built it, I don't know if they had power in here at that time or not
No,
yet.
we had a 32-volt electric plant with storage batteries, so that when the plant wasn't running, it was a little dull. And if you wanted to read by the lights, you turned on the light plant. But you could have light without the plant running. We had no running water at that time, and
How about refrigeration? Did you
no,
use
this
ice?
was not good enough for refrigeration, so we had an ice house, and every year we cut our fill of ice. And it was down at the west end of our property on this side of the peninsula. We're located on Manitowish Lake.
Was your family up here mainly in the summertime?
Yes, but we stayed a lot. We in the late 20s, my brother Gordon was going to Northland College in Ashland, Wisconsin, and my other brother Gordon and Bud and my sister Jeanette were going to Northland Academy. At the same time, Vivian Hills was going up there. So we were, I being about 5 years old then, they had no reason to go down south, so we would stay up here. And then we would stay up here till Thanksgiving. When they had their Thanksgiving holidays, why, we would have a big dinner. Either sometimes we'd have it over here in our house, or sometimes we'd have it at Ilse's. We were very, very friendly with them at that time. So,
And you say your father's business was in Chicago?
yeah, he was in the lumber business.
Okay.
You'll find out that was his primary business. He liked to fiddle around with other things. If you'll check, it's in the records and the newspapers and so on. That over here we have the F&M Bank, which used to be Land O'Lakes Bank, which used to be the Woodruff State Bank, of which my father was the first president and one of the founders. But then he didn't stay that long. I mean, he was gone. In 1929, I have a copy of the bill of sale in here somewhere. He bought the Sports Afield magazine for $450. Tax sale. For the court sale. And he published it, I don't know how many years, and then he sold it to his editor, Joe Godfrey Jr., and which of course has since been sold to the Hearst Publications. I think, well, I don't know who published it now, but I know Hearst had it for a while. That, of course, he brought a lot of people in here, fishermen. And there is a film I wish I could find. There was a man named Will Jameson who had a company, a Jameson Bait Company in Chicago. And he designed what he called a barbless hook, which instead of a hook, a barb on it, had a little bump in it, which would kind of hold, but it wouldn't catch anything. And he wanted to show that you could catch fish with it and let them go and not hurt them. So I have some pictures down in Dallas of these men, and my dad had them up here as part of it. They made a film of it. They put cameras in the boat and went out on Benson Lake. And one day caught and running, taking film of them, caught 26 muskies, full-size muskies. I got the little one, took pictures of them, threw them back to illustrate. And this is, of course, he used this as part to show the country and the fishing here, but also it was also used as an advertising medium for showing that you could catch fish with this hook. And I wish we had that thing had taken on, because it would sure save a lot of fish.
Did your dad like to fish quite a bit?
Oh yes, he was quite a fisherman.
How about your brothers? Did they follow?
No, I'm the only one. I've fished all the time. I'll fish for anything. Anything that's biting, I'll fish just to catch it and throw it back.
Did you have quite a few boats, motors up here at
Yeah, we We had a few of them, yes, we very do. We got, we had a lot, you know, for the early years, but later on, as I said, my brothers were not too much interested in it, and I was away earning a living, so to speak. And so we didn't really have a fishing boat in the place till I came back permanently in 1994, and I was got one here.
In the earlier days when you travel up from Chicago, did you come by car then, or?
Yes, the road out here was Route 10, gravel. It used to take us 2 days to drive from Chicago up here. We stopped at Stevens Point. We could make it to Stevens Point in 1 day, but that was a full day, and then you'd come the rest of the way up here the next day. And then when they changed it to 51 and got paved, we finally got it down. We could make it about 10 or 12 hours, come through, and the cars got better. And so finally, it's the way it is now. Come up from Chicago in 6.5 hours.
Well, let's see, what would be your earliest year that you were up here then, as a child?
Well, let me see. I was born in December 1918, so my first year was the summer of 1919.
And do you recall, what did kids do around here in the summertime?
Well, let's say I was kind of alone, if you were up here alone. I don't know. Let's say I kept busy. I was in the water. I would put my bathing suit on in the morning. We wore bathing suits then, not trunks. But I would put it on in the morning, and I had it on when I went to bed at night. That was in boats. My dad let me, as soon as I learned to swim, I had to learn to swim first. And once I knew how to swim, I could use the boats.
Now, you have quite a few notebooks here. Were there any things in particular that you thought you might mention as you leafed through them?
Wait, there was a couple of things I wanted to go for. Oh, I was going to show you, I didn't know whether you might be interested in this or not. I could give you a copy. This is one of these maps that they put out, the advertising map, and this is the 1962 version. And you can compare to the 1962, and you can compare it with what it is today. You would still find this today.
I don't know.
I'll
tell you what.
You might want to take that along if you want to. I can give you this one.
We could get a quick shot of this if you would hold up that edge of it.
Yeah, I don't know how it would be.
Do it down and see how we can focus in on that.
But this one shows, I think Palmer Hanson is town president, and my father is, I don't know, Justice of the Peace. It's on there somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
And this was continued. Well, they're still putting this out now. Some of them are still putting it out now. But if you'd like to take that, you can have that.
Okay, what he was referring to were town officers here. Is that close enough?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he was on there or not. Was that on there?
Justice of the Peace.
Yeah. This is 20 years later, and this is when my brother was putting it out. All different. And he even put one out on Winchester area.
Huh.
The other things I was noticing, I had a couple of things in here. I put them in here, but I thought I might mention, my dad was, I said he was quite active in the area, and here's a little thing here that I've been unable to verify. I've got different stories on it, but there was a little thing he put out stating about it was when he was a Republican committeeman up here, but he told about the time they had a polling place in this area, and he said that was in 1918. They'd always been going to Flambeau, but then they finally had a polling place established here. It was called, known as Spider Lake, or number 2 precinct of Lac du Flambeau. And the interesting thing here that I think is that in the first election there was a primary, and they had 29 people vote, and 28 Republicans and 1 socialist. Where were the Democrats? I think that's why I haven't been able to verify that. If you can do it, I give you that. If you can see if that's true or not. I don't know.
Oh, is this a photograph of your?
Yeah, that's
father?
my father. Yeah, very young. That was that's the. And there's no other. I don't think I have anything other. That was important here. My dad did a lot of letter writing to the editor up here, and he wrote. He had a man that always answered him by the name of Zeno, but he wrote. You'll find it all through. I've got pages of it. This is just parts of it here. That he wrote. He used names like you know who and I know whom and Miss Agitate and Will Ask 'em and several others. Charlie Chattering and Cash Slocum and Lizzie Livingood, but all these letters to the editor, and they just through the years. This is in the 40s and 50s. I know he's got some in the 60s and into the 70s. I don't have them all, but there's not, there's a lot of it is nothing, and then there's a lot of significance in it. I found one article. He wrote a lot of poetry, and that's what where did I have that here? He wrote a poem that, I was trying to see if the politicians agree this. Here. He says here, this is an article in one of the papers here about Manitowish Waters. What's the VCNR? I don't know what paper that is. In 1960.
Vitals County Review.
Yeah, Vitals County News Review, that's it. This is an article that said about the waters of youth. He wrote this poem 25 years previous to that. So it must have been 1943, I don't know. It was used here for a long time. It's put in the Chamber of Commerce booklet back then. And he wrote a lot of poetry, and some was good, some was, no rush, you can. But I did notice that he was, I haven't found the article here, but at one time he was elected an honorary member of the Wisconsin Poets Society. I never thought his was that good, but evidently somebody thought it was. And so you just never know. Well, I guess everybody knows his story. He's got so many stories. Being a captain, he was captain in the field artillery during World War I. He was a captain in the merchant marine in World War II.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, they wouldn't take him back in the army. He was too old, so he went to work. He got a job as an apprentice seaman on a tanker in the Great Lakes. And once he passed his able-bodied seaman, he went to the Pacific, and every time he put in the time, he'd come back and take the test, and he moved up. And I think he was the oldest, in the records, he was the oldest man. In San Francisco, he was the oldest man ever to take and pass the master's papers.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. And that was all during World War II?
Yeah. So he was, and that's why they call him captain. He was a captain 2 ways. So. But, as I say, I think what happened, the reason he did that was he had this lumber business, and he had 3 sons, and he figured he was going to have some sons in the lumber business, and nobody went. So he sold it out, retired, and got up here, and was going crazy, I guess, and not having anything to do. He liked to do something, so.
Well, he sold that before World War II? That's number company.
And so when the war started, he got into this thing, and he went on, and kept him busy, kept him alive, you know. But, so really, to cover everything,
Oh, I understand. It looks like you have a wealth of things here.
oh, I got 3 books. It's this is just kind of chasing the whole history through from that on. And there's lots of letters and different things in here. In fact, there's one in here. I don't know where it is, from my brother Gordon to my father in 1918. He was in the service and I was born. And it's dated 10 days after my birthday. And nobody gave me a name yet. And he's writing and said, "What are we going to call it?"
Oh, my
And that
goodness.
was me. So I was, I wasn't very impressive, I guess.
A little earlier, you were talking about Mitchell's farm and going over there for milk. Back before there were a great many stores here and whatnot, do you recall anything about where the family got their groceries and foodstuffs?
We went to, in the earliest days, we went through a Kendrickson's store. He had a grocery store in Mercer. So there was Brandt's and there was Kendrickson's. And then Kendrickson sold out to a man by the name of Ruggie, and then we just dealt there. For some reason or other, we never dealt with Brandt's. Ruggie had a hardware store and a grocery store there. That's where we went and did our shopping. We never went to the Monopoly.
And the road up to Mercer at that time, was that still Highway 10?
No, it became 51.
Okay.
Well, I don't know when that happened. It had to be around 1930, somewhere in the late 20s or early 30s. So I don't remember exactly what it was. You know, to me it was just another number. I was just a kid. But that was a long time ago.
Did you find cause to go to any of the other communities around? Was Winchester there at that time, or?
It was a little town, yeah.
But
not much. No.
Had much reason to
No,
go over
it
there?
was really, we had, things slowly grew around the dam down there, but it was a long time before, well, let's see, it was in the 30s when George Laporte opened that store there. And, we had the Winmar, and we had Rudy's Rest Haven, which is now the Bavarian, and there wasn't much else. Boss was there, Kerner's was there. You'll notice that on that map, at that time, in 1962, coming later that, they had a Rush Lake Marina, but that's gone, and now we got the Spider Lake Marina. So that had developed over there, but it didn't take for some reason. I think it was right down in there where Kohler Park is today. But I think that's the advantage. No, it was very, very quiet here. Very quiet. The only speedboat nut we had on the lakes was Lloyd Voss with his sea sled.
Oh.
And I bought that from him in about 1934. I bought that when I was my teenager. I bought that for $22.50.
What kind of a rig was that? A sea
Well,
sled?
the sea sled was a concave bottom boat, flat. It was fully flat. It was about 18 feet long. That one was fully bottom, curved like that with a kind of sharp edge. It looked like a catamaran, but it wasn't. But if you tried to turn too fast, it would dig in and flip. You had to take a broad turn. And the bottom was 3/8 inch or less cedar. It was all cedar.
And what,
So you always had water in it. You never make it not leaking out.
what kind of an engine did that have on it then?
I had an Evinrude 16.
Oh.
And my neighbor, that's when you begin to get into teenagers, where you start to needs somebody around, and I had somebody over here exactly my same age, Ira Joseph. He was, they didn't build their home over there where they are in Rich Lake until 1935. They built it, they brought it up. It was a model home from a World's Fair. So they rented a house right down the lake here. So he and I were always out. He had his boat and I had mine, and then we were pulling a surfboard. We didn't have water skis in those days. But we didn't exactly tear up the lake with those boats. They weren't like they have today.
Well, did his folks rent a place then for the whole summer that you recall that he was there?
Yeah, they rented for the whole summer. They were there, I can remember it, 32, 33, and 34. I think I met him in 1932, before I got out of, so that was going into 8th grade. And they were there.
Well, it sounds like the Smith family has spent many interesting and enjoyable years up here.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like it has.
It's home.
Okay. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Unless you have some other specific things you'd like to get into.
No, I don't think so. I just, I can't think of anything that's, like I said, most people, the people that know my dad are disappearing slowly.
Yeah.
And that's myself. I hope to be around another few years.
Oh, for sure.
And, you were asking about photos. I may be able to find you a photo of what this place looked like in 1927.
Oh, that'd be terrific if we could see it.
Didn't have any trees on it like I have now. It was pretty. In fact, I got pictures and somewhere in here I got a picture of the cottage that was originally built as an ice house and then the attic.
Oh,
And the trees around it and nothing.
that'd be interesting. Maybe we'll.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is the family, my brothers and my sisters and myself. This is my oldest brother, Gordon. This is my sister, Jeanette. This is my brother, Bud. And then this is I here, Kenneth G. Smith. And this was taken at a wedding, obviously, up here.
Sure.
We were one of my brother's daughters got married. I don't remember exact year that
This
was.
one of the house.
And we got a picture of my mother and dad in there
I'm
too.
gonna get it.
Now this family goes back so far, it's unbelievable. Oh my goodness. I don't know, I had a real good picture of this place with showing with the boathouse, the house, and everything. But I don't seem to be able to find it. I'm just sure it was in, I know it was in one of these here. I don't know what happened to it.
Is this the original house?
That's the original house, yeah, they're kind of small. I had a picture that was a little bit bigger than that, but that's the original house, built in 1917. I'll tell you what happened here is that
When your dad was,
it
says,
I don't even know what it says, yeah. Okay. They were there in 1915.
was he mayor of Berlin?
Yeah, Illinois. This is a picture of my father taken when he was mayor of Berwyn, Illinois, and that was about between 1915 and 1917. I think the best bet for the pictures of the property is right in here. You can,
I'm moving.
but now, this is a picture of the house that was built in 1917. This is in the early 20s. And we have a raft that they built a contrived high dive on it. And you see That was our entertainment. Swimming was most of it we did. We had the boathouse, and we had the big house there. That was what the place developed into at first. And that was the center of our activities. We had a couple of inboard launches that we used that were not like the fancy boats we run around in today. They putted along, but were a little bit quieter than an outboard motor.
Sir.
Yes. I don't know if you want me to say anything or not, but this is when they took the Jameson Bait Company party down the Manitowish River to Benson Lake. And they were going fishing, and they had the camera in there, which they set up in one of those little rowboats to take the pictures of them catching the muskies on this hook. It was interesting.
Okay.
Okay. This is a picture of the first house built on the property here. It was built in 1916. It was built as an ice house, and then there was a little extension was put on it. As you can see, it's got more than just one room up there. 2 bedrooms were added, and we called it the Brown Cottage, and that's where my family then stayed while they were building the big home in 1917.
Ready?
Well, this is a picture of my father with a cap on right in here, and Mr. Will Jameson of the Jameson Bait Company when they were going out to take the movies for their film on catching muskies with a marvelous hook. And that in back, if you notice, is the type of car we had to use back in the 20s. And with gravel roads still out there, and a 2-day trip from Chicago, 2 tires on the back. And you needed them sometimes. Must be careful, kid. Well, it was in 1927, my father took a group of us down the Manitowish River on a canoe trip. That was my sister and her boyfriend and my sister-in-law to be and another friend and my brother and a friend and myself and my dad. And the only thing we were going to go through, the flowage was very tough to find your way through at that time. It was all trees, you had to try to follow the river channel. So he hired a guide, primarily to see if he could help us through the channel, through the flowage. But the main thing was that below the dam, going on to Park Falls, there was 26 miles of rapids in there. There's one rapids called Schultz's Rapids that was supposed to be, you're supposed to portage around, and we didn't know where he was, and he was there to keep us from going into that rapids. But anyhow, the man, it was Fred Dane. I don't know if any of you remember him or not. But whatever happened, he kept saying that my brother and his friends, they all wanted to go ahead of us. They wanted to go faster than we was going. I was with my father. So Fred said, well, don't worry, it's miles ahead yet. It's a long ways ahead. And we came around a bend in the river, and he let my dad and let the other canoes go ahead. And there was my brother and his friends standing in the middle of the river up to their neck in water. Another canoe hung up on a rock, and the one with my sister in it went right straight through, going straight through. And our guide that had been hired specifically for this to keep us out of it said, by God, it Schultz's Rapids. And that was when we fired him. But I'll never forget that. It was being only 9 years old, it impressed me. And we went right straight through also, but that was it. Put him together. So he was both Smiths who went to high school together and got married, and here we are. He was let's say my mother was very strange. My father was a blustery person. He was, he'd get very loud when he was, reprimanding it, but always fair, But if you wanted to know who ruled the place, you just watch my mother. I mean, when she would let things go, she never said much unless she thought she should. And I remember he went up to Minnesota, and he bought a lot of land up there on lakes. Out at Basswood Lake, and then it was up on Lake Vermilion, which is out of Grand Marais. And he came back and he said that it was going to get crowded around here, and he wanted to move our places, go up there. And that's when my mother said, no way, this is my home up here, and you better sell that. And he did. There was no further questions. She did him the honor. I remember I went with her in the fall of 1931 that time. I went up to look at the place at Lake Vermilion. And, it was a gunflint lake, so we went to look at it. It's out of Grand Marais. And she went up there, we went up and we looked at it. There was a peninsula just like this, it was on the Canadian side. She left, and when she came home, then she said, Charles, no. And that was it. We didn't hear any more about it. So you know who was that probably the same in a lot of households.
Yeah, I think so.